Like you said, let's rock and roll at 780.
Let's rock and roll. It is July 9th, the year. Yeah, we're still stuck in 2024. Welcome aboard, everybody. Listen to the Crushing Iron podcast, and this is episode 780.
780, and I don't know. I'm looking at 2024 this morning. It doesn't look too bad. It's really nice out. I'm in the moment. I'm right here with you in a podcast.
That's right. It is. It's actually really nice here, too. I actually worked outside a little bit this morning before tennis came on and came inside. But, yeah, it's actually, you know what? The weather is what you make it. You can choose to be miserable with it. You can choose to be hot. You can choose to be cold. But a lot of times it just is what it is. So it's all in the head, I think. Yes, you have temperatures that vary. But you know what? There's things that are great with all of it. As I actually having this conversation yesterday with an athlete who is kind of going through, is going through like some stem cell stuff with the cancer diagnosis. And he's doing some like clinical trials, or he's traveling a lot to Boston and coming back. And we were just talking about, you know, the next few weeks, now that things are kind of clearing up, and he was thinking about 2025. And I said, it's funny you mention this because, you know, you and I both work with a ton of athletes who, you know, I think one of the biggest myths and misconceptions about coaching is that you have to have a race on the calendar, right? You have to have something on the calendar to go for to make you deserve coaching or need a coach. But the fact of the matter is every single person, regardless of ability or goals, or if you even have a goal, I think deserves to have coaching, great structure, great accountability, and most importantly, great support. And the majority of the athletes we work with us on a year-round basis because they want that structure. And then most importantly, they need that support, right? They need to be able to take the stress off their life. So he and I were talking, and I said, you know, it's funny. A lot of people just kind of mail it in this time of year, and they, you know, everyone thinks about training on a you know, January to December cycle or a February to September. You know, they're 20 weeks out, they're 30 weeks out, but the goal is to always be getting fitter and faster, right? You know, as we kind of mold that through being healthier and happier. Like, yes, volume is lower in certain periods and higher than others. Intensity is lower in some periods and higher than others. Like, it all undulates, but you're always, you know, kind of it's great to be structured. What I told him was, you know, a lot of athletes either don't see a race happening later this year, so they just kind of mail it in and piddle, right? They're kind of, as my grandfather used to say, don't ever be stuck in a doorway. You're going nowhere and you're coming from nowhere. And that is what a lot of athletes do this time of year. They don't have a race anymore on the calendar, or they're not sure they can fit one in, so they just kind of piddle around and exercise occasionally with real no direction and support. And I was telling him, I said, listen, like the temperature outside right now is absolutely perfect for aerobic training. So if we're thinking about 2025, right, and where you are right now, the best time of year, in my opinion, to actually do quote unquote, right, lots of base training, which to most people equates to lots of aerobic training, is right now, because you get free benefit. Right? You go outside and it's 90 degrees or humidity's high. You take things really, really slow, and you let the temperature, the humidity, the dew point, all these things kind of get you an extra boost. So you do all this easy volume in the time of year where it's easiest to do the easy volume, right? Versus the intensity, because you go outside right now and do a tempo run or a threshold run, or you ride outside or even swim outside. RP is higher, pace watts slower, right? For heart rate's higher because of the conditions. So, and the recovery cost is so much greater because you're doing it in conditions that are obviously harder. And the best thing to do right now is to get that base training. That way, when the seasons change and the temps become a lot more favorable, you're super fit. You've had a great aerobic training. Now you can take October through, you know, and some people September, all the way through maybe December, right? Before it gets real cold to where it's hard to run harder. And then you get the seasonal EPO boost, right? From training in the heat to then training in cooler weather. And instead of having to kind of go back towards more aerobic work, right, where it's easy on easy, you can actually use the volume that you've built, right, during the hotter part of the year by accumulating those miles and yardage and actually start to do some really good quality work. And again, the recovery cost is less because it's the perfect time of year, right? Perfect conditions, environmental conditions, if you will, makes the recovery cost less. So when you're managing stress, like that's the best way to do it. And then you can actually go back and kind of recycle through that later in the year. But this is the best time to do that. So again, there's lots of positives for all weather. And, I think we just have to look at it that way. And that's what I told him. I said, we're just going to start chipping away towards 2025 and doing that aerobic work. And come November, when we have a big enough base and a strong enough foundation to where speed work actually means something, as in you can actually absorb it and your body's ready to handle it, and you can wake up the next day and not feel destroyed or shelled, or spent, then it's going to be even better, because you get back up the next day, it's going to be 50, 40 degrees, it's going to feel perfect, and right back at it. So again, it's a great time of year for everything, no matter what time of year it is. It's just really all about how you approach it and how you execute things.
Yeah, man, it's funny you brought that up because, yeah, it's like we were talking about it before the podcast about what is fun. And for me, I love this shit, I love when it's hot out, and I love when it's like, you're going into a little bit of a challenge out there, and I don't really think about trying to get super fast right now, but what I think about a lot is with my form, and I think about trying to make it easier. So I'll go out and try and make a traditional run feel easier. That's like what I think about all the time. How can I make this feel easier when I'm running? How can I get my balance better and do, just be getting done with a run in this type of weather or a ride or whatever, and actually not feeling shelled, but not worrying about, because knowing that I'm getting my form and technique better on everything, that's going to help me in the long run. And it's a really great time for that, because I just don't expect to be super fast right now. And I think if you can get that in your mind, you're probably, and realize that you're doing work that's going to make you faster. That's really the trick, right? It's like, how do you turn that into enjoying that process? And that becomes the fun, right? When you can just enjoy the process, it's like trying to write a book and starting with the ending, it's just like, it never is satiating, because then you can't really do the actual work that you need. And you're right, man. It's a great time for building all that up without a ton of pressure, because, you have, the elements to deal with. And if you're okay with that and realize that, yeah, you're building something that's going to be paying off, but just being patient with it. I don't know, man. I love getting out in the hot weather. I don't know what it is. I mean, I typically don't even work out in the mornings. I'll just hit the afternoon on purpose. But I go into it with a cool head, like you're saying. I mean, the weather is what it is. And if you can kind of not be beaten down and just sort of look forward to it, I think you're winning.
No, I totally agree. And I think I know we've talked about it a lot, and we'll kind of use this to kind of like springboard into the extended topic of the day. But, extremes are fantastic for you, I think, mentally and physically, as long as you look at them and treat them for what they are, right? Which is a time or a duration for an experience, right? Not for a PR, not for a new Strava segment, not to see your best threshold, not to see your best 50 in the outdoor 50-meter pool, but for the experience, right? To make you tougher, to understand how to adapt, to understand how to, manage things. And to me, it's actually a really great way. And I put this in a few comments yesterday in Training Peaks, and also similarly in the Zoom video I sent out. But is that, it's a lot of it's very exploratory in nature with the extreme temps. And we've posted this before, ideal running temp is like what, high 40s, low 50s. And then as you move right higher than that, the temperature's higher with higher humidity, higher dew point, the speed and pace degradation is huge. And you just increase the percentage of it being less optimal. Same goes for getting colder, right? Because I think we forget often that the extremes in temperature require a significant amount of energy from ourselves when we race and when we train, because your body is either trying to cool its core temp, right? Or it's trying to warm it up. So all that energy, right? You can't pull your body in 7 different places and expect it to work optimally, right? Yes, it's always needs to be doing different things, but I look back at like the best run shape I've ever been in, and I think it was because I was very streamlined it was back when I lived in Kansas the first time. And I think I got up to a couple like 70, 80, 90-mile run weeks. And I was doing them all fasted with with just noon. It was also a great time of year. But when I look back at that and I wonder, I mean, I wonder if I would have handled all that. Well, a lot of it was I was doing a lot of frequency. I wasn't trying to do, that was 6 runs a week, right? For all those things. It was fall, perfect time of weather. So my body's not pulling reserves and energy to keep itself cool or to warm itself up, right? It was perfect temps. But at the same time, it was also not having to take energy to work towards digestion, right? I was doing them all fasted. I was really doing them on fat. So there's really I was really limiting all the extra work that your body kind of has to go to obviously digest food, cool itself, heat itself up, all these kind of things. And I think that made everything easier and also made the recovery easier. So, when you look at the temperatures, again, just look at them as an experience to figure things out, right? Especially if you know and understand you're going to race in hot conditions, you better prepare for it. And you better understand how your body's going to work in all conditions, right? 5 o'clock in the morning, what's it going to feel like? 3 o'clock in the afternoon, what is it going to feel like? You don't need to do it every day, but you need to understand what your body is going to, how your body is going to react within that. And again, it's exploratory in nature. It is a opportunity to educate yourself and learn something. It is almost stress-free, in my opinion, because you should go into it with no expectation. I'm just here to learn, and I'm here to have fun doing it, and that's it. And as we kind of like springboard into our topic today, as we were talking about work and fun, is I think one of the biggest issues that athletes have, especially this time of year when they're getting closer and closer to racing, is their definition, how they quantify, and how they I don't want to use the word stack because I hate that word, how they space out their sessions. I had an athlete earlier today. He was looking through Training Peaks, looking at his Monday workout, and he's like, "Hey, I'm going to be gone all weekend at a water park with the kids, and so I want to move all my stuff into these 5 days." And I said, "Well, I know that seems great, right? It seems like I'm getting the work in, but that's not really work. That's called overtraining." Like to me, when we think of the word work, I think about doing enough work that's also that comes before the appropriate amount of recovery, right? So you can work for 4 hours, right? I'm the trainer. You can go out and do 3, different sessions. But if you don't have the same amount of time required to recover, then some of that work is negated. Not just negated, but in fact will make you slower and more fatigued and run down, right? Overtrained, right? It'll affect your hormone, affect everything. But more athletes were just absorbed with the amount of work, the amount of volume, the amount of intensity they can get in. Then they assume it's all better, and it's not. You're better by sleeping better, right? I had an athlete who just recently kind of really, really, really changed their diet. Not really changed, but just cleaned it up for better or for worse. And now they're sleeping better, and now they're training better. And it's not that they're seeing PRs in every time they go out for a training session, but what they are doing is they're recovering better. And it's hard. And I was telling him, he's like, I'm just getting a lot of sleep. I'm able to take naps. And I said, well, I know you think that's the number one indicator for why you've feel better this week, but it's actually probably food related, right? Because generally speaking, if you eat well and you fuel well, right, with the right foods, the right time, then you're going to sleep better. And if you sleep better, you're more recovered. And if you're more recovered, you feel better when you start your training. And then after you do the training, you feel better afterwards. So you don't need as long to recover. Therefore, you can do the next session at less of a deficit. right? So if you kind of start your week out with a 100 points where you get to kind of dig into, right? And then each time you recover, you bump it back up. A lot of people start with 100, positive stress points, right? When it comes to training. And then by the end of the week, they're at negative 80. They've just dug a giant hole. Whereas you should go train, and deplete it from 100 to 70. And then recovery should usually be plus 20, plus 25, not back to baseline, but close, and there's nothing wrong with going from 100 down to 0, but it's how you get there, right? The closer you get to 0, the more days you're going to take off. Now you're looking at recovery week versus recovery 2 or 3 days, but it all adds up. And so while you're obsessed with work, the part of the work that's fun is feeling good while you do it. Right. And I think a lot of triathletes get into this almost masochistic way of training where it's beating themselves down every day, and they kind of use the quote unquote work or the volume and the intensity to, in the moment, feel like they're getting better, but they're not. Right. And it's not fun. It's not fun to beat yourself down every day. You can't do it. And nor is it good for you. Right. It messes your body up. You have to be able to recover. So when you think from a stress standpoint, you kind of walk through your week and look at it, and you start on Monday, or maybe, and this is coming off of, maybe a recovery week, a recovery cycle where you're topped off at 100, and you might go down to, from 100 down to 40 by the end of the week. Well, that doesn't need to happen on Monday, right? You don't need to go from 100 and have a free fall down to 40 on day one, because then the next day is going to have to be like active recovery, and probably even the next day to get you back up to like 80, 85. But a lot of athletes do this, they'll hop off the platform dive, 100 meters and do a cannonball, and all of a sudden they're down to 20 on Tuesday, and they want to hammer themselves again, and they're down to 5, and they hammer themselves again on Wednesday, and they're negative 5, and they miss a workout, so they're going to stack 2 on Thursday, and they're at negative 10, and then they don't want to miss anything again, so Friday they do their long swim and maybe a hard run, now they're negative 15, and then they're heading into the weekend, and they can't figure out why the weekend's workouts go bad. I just keep bonking, man. I just keep bonking. You hammered yourself in training. You probably got hammered in life, right? Monday through Fridays, most people's work schedule. You probably got hammered with life stress, personal stress, professional stress, family stress. And then you go into the weekend, right? And you wake up early, dehydrated, probably haven't eaten that great the night before. And you just can't figure out why these rides outside in the heat and the humidity aren't going well. And I just feel like I'm not getting any faster. Well, because the truth is you're not. So it's appropriate that you feel that way, but it's also a very, very, very easy problem to resolve. But it's also a problem. It's also very hard to resolve that problem for a lot of people on their own, because it requires objectivity. It requires restraint. And most importantly, and I know this is a really hard word, it requires rest. And rest can mean a day off. Rest can mean a 2,000 easy in the pool. A rest day could mean an hour recovery spin. A rest day could mean yoga, meditation, a long walk, a choice day. Or recovery could also mean just go out and have fun today, do something and let loose. Not without restraint, right? The goal is to recover, but again, you need to recover mentally and physically to be ready for race day. And so I think, like, again, this time of year when you've got added stressors that you can't really, get around, you have to adapt to it. And again, hotter temperatures, higher dew point, higher humidity, most people higher training volume, more intensity as they're getting ready for the big race. It's like stress on stress on stress on stress on stress. And then you have athletes for the 4th year in a row to the exact same time in their Ironman, or their 70.3 or their sprint or Olympic, and they just can't figure out how they got there. And it's because they're repeating the same bad cycle over and over and over again.
Mm. Well, I'm glad you brought up food and fueling in general like that, because sometimes I think about like our run camps, right? And we put in pretty big volume out there, 45, 50 miles in a few days or 4 days or something. And I'm always amazed by how we can, how I can just kind of keep coming back to the well. But man, we eat and sleep a lot out there, and there's something to be said for that. And, you know, I think a lot of us get into these cycles where, you know, what that magic hour kind of cut off on a workout. If I'm going out for a bike ride and I can kind of go out and just, you know, maybe go a little hard, but spin it out for an hour. I'm usually really good with just, you know, drinking whatever. But if I'm going longer, like an hour and a half, it's amazing to me how much better I feel if I eat something beforehand or make sure that I'm eating during the ride and fueling it, you know. And then I think we get in sort of the habit of kind of under fueling or under preparing for those longer days, you know. And like you're saying, and then all of a sudden it just creates this, you know, deep hole or this bonk halfway through it or whatever, because we're sort of used to skimping a little bit. And I think we all get into this, well, I'm going to do this, not, you know, I'm trying to lose some weight, or, you know, we get into that thing, right? And I think it actually backfires most of the time if you don't eat enough, because then, you know, your body is not going to function as well and everything like that. You know, I wanted to quickly bring it up because I assume you've been watching the tour. Oh yeah, no spoilers. And I just want to give a quick shout out real quick to Chuck Knuth, who spoiled the Cavendish win. I actually interviewed him, and he told me that you were not happy with that.
Totally. I mean, I got it recorded, and I'm staying away from everything. I'm not looking at the internet. I'm not looking at anything. Shoots me a text. Cavendish, what a freak! I'm like, you motherfucker. I'm like, serious right now? He fucking spoiled it for me, man.
Yeah,
you spoiled.
Well, and then before I go into it, did you watch the gravel stage yet?
I did. Yeah, I'm caught up.
Okay. So I was watching, I've been kind of getting into that and then watching some post interviews and things like that. And they were talking about that specifically with regard to recovery. And the host, he said, you know, the tour made a really smart decision by giving everybody an off day after that. And the other guy's like, well, yeah, you know, but I doubt if they didn't have an off day that Pogača would have been attacking so much.
100%.
The whole stage. You know, he was taking advantage of that off day and trying to burn out Vingegaard, which, by the way, and I don't know if you're in favor of it. I've mixed emotions. I mean, it was kind of interesting to watch it, but boy, that could, you know, that type of course or stage can really throw a wrench in the whole tour, you know, and it almost did with Vingegaard because he was lucky to have a guy with him. And he ended up riding someone else's bike for like 100K.
Yeah.
I mean, that is like crazy that he actually could hang around, even though, you know, I don't think it was that terrible of a fit, but still, I mean, you're talking about the winner of the last two tours, and now he's got to ride someone else's bike for 100 kilometers. That could have been really bad.
I think he probably didn't even blink.
Probably not. I mean,
I'm sure it wasn't ideal, but no, I totally agree. And I was thinking that same thing too. When Pogača went off the first time, and you could hear his team car, they were thinking like, you know, we don't really have anything to lose today because we got tomorrow as a rest day. Mm-hmm. So we can gain some time today and put some more time into the other GC contenders, or we come back and you know, at worst we don't use the energy and we'll come back feeling better after the rest day. So it was a win-win in my opinion. It was you go all in like they tried to, right? And if the American, I can't remember his name, he's from Idaho, hadn't pulled Vingegaard back to him, he probably would have gotten more time. But they pulled him back on that second time he went for it during the gravel. You know, so you look at it was a win-win. It was you go hard today and you recover the next day and you're probably back, but the time gain is enough to where it's worth it. Because you get to recover. If it had been this gravel stage and the next day was their first day of the Pyrenees, they would never have said that. He would have been saving energy. He wouldn't have done an ounce of work. And there were plenty of times before we went up front where he was pulling the peloton. Mm-hmm. You know, they had like 25, 30 guys left. It was pretty small at that point, but he wouldn't have been doing any of the work had they been looking at a few hard days. But they weren't. And so he did. It didn't work out. So then he pulled back some and then rode the rest of the group. And then now he's going to feel even better when they go back to work, or they're already at work, I guess, right now today. And so, again, like you have to and I think this is one of the things, like as you follow the tour and you listen to some of the coaches and some of the teams talk, is that a lot of these riders, they use some of these stages as fitness boosts. right?
Yeah,
They
that's
use, a
crazy.
lot of them are better in week 2 and week 3 because they're getting so, and yes, you see the finish and you see the Pyrenees, but if you think about how much aerobic volume they're getting in, it's insane. I
Yeah.
mean, they're aerobic for 90%, if not more, of the day they're in, because they're drafting, they're getting a huge benefit from the peloton, they're coasting, and then when it's time to hammer, they can hammer. But think if they hammered every day. That's why you don't see somebody win every single day, right? Because you can't. You dig a hole, right? And so you think about the best athletes in the world that train 20 hours a week know that they can't go to the well every day. And you take their ability and their where they are in their athlete life cycle, or their athlete years, if you will, and then you condense that down to what an age grouper is, amount of hours and what they are in athlete years. And then you see them trying to do 60% intensity, 40%, aerobic work. And then they wonder why they can't develop. Right. And then there's so much, information and misinformation and ways to hook people into certain types of training that'll make you faster, but for about a minute. Right. For about a minute. And so you crash. Right. It's intensity, 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 intensity. And then you get better for a minute until your body doesn't catch up. Your body digs itself a hole. And it takes you forever to get out of. I call it there are plenty of training programs out there that I consider make it or break it. Either going to make you into a very top level age grouper, or they're going to break you in half.
Mm.
Either with injury or niggles or overtraining or messing up your whole system. And so I think that, again, like when you look at it, and we talked about it that maybe a month, 2 months ago, about the soothing and the strain and the stress. Like, you should, in my opinion, like if you don't embrace the soothe days to where you're recovering and there's no stress, you'll never be excited enough to nail the stress days to get the most out of it. And I think that is because, again, like, your ability to recover is also predicated on the work done prior, right? So you can't go from a 100 all the way down to a 40 and then train again in respect to have a big bump up to 35 to 40, getting back up to 80-85% for the week, if all you do is beat yourself down, you can't recover as back. So doing a recovery that would have normally gotten you back to 25 or 30 points might only get you back up 5 because you don't have any left. Your body can't adapt. And so you might think that's what it needs, but then what you figure out is you actually need longer. So I think, again, like when you look at your week and you look at your days and you look at individual sessions, over the course of the day, right? You got 2 sessions listed, you come into it and you're a little bit fatigued and you got 2 for the day. Always, always, always start the first one easy. Let's say you went out on a Sunday, or let's say Monday evening you went out, and I'm use a swim, for example, because I think people really underestimate this. You go out and you get off work on a Monday afternoon and you head to the local long course outdoor pool. It's 95 degrees outside. The water's probably 90. And you swim a really hard 3,000, 3,500, 4K, right? Tired from the day, in the heat, high humidity, high dew point, really hot water. Again, going back to the running thing, that's the same thing. That's why there's an ideal depth and temperature for competition pools, because anything hotter or colder and your body has to work to keep it warmer or work to cool it off. And so you wake up the next day and you're like, God, I am roasted today. And I've got a bike session today with a little bit of quality and then a run later. Well, don't immediately try to hammer it on the bike session. Take it easy, right? At least for the first half of it. See how you really feel, or take the whole thing easy and then see what happens later on in the day. Because what's the worst thing? And this is one of my favorite comments from athletes, like, did I mess this up by going too easy? Fuck no. If anything, you did the best thing, and now you're going to be able to rip it tomorrow, right? So if you look at things on like a seesaw, you go in and you're like, I'm going to take this ride easy. I'm going to take the run easy. So you shifted from going into an overly fatigued state to now a little bit fresher state than what we thought and anticipated when we programmed your week, what it was going to look like on Wednesday. So instead of coming into, let's say, a short interval run and in an interval swim on Wednesday, or a pull set, whatever it is, with a -20 where you started for the week of 100, you're only at a -10. Well, now that day is going to go even better, and maybe you can dig a little bit further. And then the cool thing is as long as you read that, right, then you end up in the exact same place you should have been on Wednesday night, no matter how your first 2 days went. So you can either do, example is Monday late evening swim was really hard on your body, left you dehydrated, didn't get enough sleep, and then instead you went and you got your, an easy Tuesday. You took Tuesday as an easy ride and easy run, but brought you right back to where you needed to be to nail your sessions on Wednesday. Same exact thing as if you had gotten up early on Wednesday morning, swam inside, perfect water temperature, right? Went well, had plenty of the day to sleep well, and to fuel well, get a good night's sleep, be hydrated. You hit your sessions like you should have on Tuesday with a little bit of effort, and then you went into Wednesday for your run. You get the same result. You get to Wednesday in the exact same shape, exact same recovered state as you would have given the other shift. But what happens is most people don't do that. Hammer on Monday, hammer again on Tuesday, Wednesday, hammer again on Thursday, and Friday they give it one more smack with the hammer. The nail goes through the wood and splinters, and then you can't get it out, and you got to start all over again. Like, those are just really simplistic ways of managing things. And it's really hard. Like, we had an athlete reach out to the team looking for a coach, and one of their things was, I need someone to be able to read me beyond me, because they're too positive all the time, which is so true with a lot of athletes. I generally say this, and I mean it. It's not in a harsh way, but athletes lie. They want to pretend they're feeling better than they really are. They want to pretend that things went better than they really did. They don't want to disappoint the training plan. They don't want to disappoint their coach. They don't want to feel like they're letting anybody down. So they will lie to themselves to pretend like things are going great. But as a coach, it is your job to read through those and see, what's going on here? You ain't telling me the truth, right? You're not telling yourself the truth. You're not telling me the truth. And I think that's it takes, that's why it's so very hard to self-coach yourself, because you can't do that. You can't see that. And if you do, it's hard to respond to that. So I think that, one, like, that's hard to see. But again, even if you're working off something, then, you can still move forward and adjust. You don't have to sit still, right? Until you don't have a choice, right? You can always move through recovery for the most part. You just can't, hammer your way through and expect to, not have quite a few nails go through the wood.
Mm. Yeah, and I think you just got to really be in tune with your body and what's going on, right? Like you mentioned that swim in the hot water, and you're trying to nail whatever it is, 3,000 yards. I mean, if you're really in tune, I think you can recognize that maybe 2,500 is enough or something like that. I was out running yesterday. I felt it was pretty hot. I went in the afternoon, and I was like, I'm going to go for like 40 minutes today. And I did, and I got done, and I was like, I feel really good. It crossed my mind to do like a loop that would be 2 miles. And then I said, well, let me just start with 1. And I got to the end of the 1, and I recognized that was enough. And I could just tell like things were starting to go into that tank, that another mile would have just really hit me pretty hard. So I just left it. And I think that you can do that when I was talking about this beforehand. We were talking about the concept of going fast and going slow, and how slow is patient and fast can be chaotic. And I think if you're caught up in that mindset of needing to go fast all the time, you're not really paying attention to a lot of things and you're not as focused. So for me, really, it's important to always be sort of aware of where I'm at, because things can change and they can fool you. And I think that's interesting. You said that about the athletes that just try to, sometimes act like they're feeling better than they are, which I think is not always a bad thing. I think it's good to be, a positive mindset like that. But I also think it's important to be honest with yourself and recognize that because, like we've said a million times, that if you went to that pool and it was super hot and you're fatigued from a long weekend and you're trying to get 3,500 and maybe 2,000's better at that point, depending on the choice, if you're outside and it's hot and there's sun out and you're going to wear yourself out. I mean, it's always, we were talking about frequency and versus volume earlier. And for me, sometimes, man, it's just, sometimes I like riding my bike more often and I don't want to go out and shell myself. And, lately that's what's been going on. And I just think we got to be aware of that, man. Like there's limits on what's going on. And I've always said it, the best workout is the one that kind of leaves you looking forward to tomorrow.
Right.
And, if you can kind of stay in that headspace and, that's where the whole thing about our coaching and our training plans is we try to set that up in a way. It's like, man, that hard workout felt good, but tomorrow's easy, swim or 30-minute run is going to feel awesome too, because it fits into the whole program and it doesn't, just hammering yourself constantly isn't the way to get better or faster or fitter or happier really, so right. I think it's just so important to be aware of what's going on. It's like the variables are always changing. We can try to prescribe the perfect week every week, but sometimes, circumstance, like you said, you might have to back some things. And I always used to talk about getting an extra day out of taking a nap and shit like that. And I think that stuff is all relative, and relevant because sometimes you can get a little recovery, or if you work out in the morning and not till the next night, that's a long time between, you got to pay attention to stuff like that.
Well, I think that is that is one of the hardest things to do for athletes is to pay attention, because because paying attention means staying present and understanding and being objective about what's happened in the past 48, 72, 96 hours. Right. Most athletes fall into the prisoner of the moment mentality, right? Of what happened right now. And then you have to every athlete, in my opinion, no matter what session is done, no matter how great or how poor, should always treat each session as it's at the core of an onion. And in order to get to the bottom of what happened, good or bad, you need to take the time to peel the layers. Not just take it for what it is and jump to a conclusion. Because the longer you peel those layers and the onions back, the more you understand how you got there. And the more required thinking it happens, right? But most athletes don't want to take the time. They don't have the time. They're not interested in taking the time. That's why I think the best coach in the world always asks questions, right? I would say 80% of my comments in Training Peaks are questions. How'd that feel? How do you think that went? How did this go? Because you need more information to figure things out, for the next day and the next day. But it's a very difficult thing to do when you're obsessed with, the work. But a lot of times, work can also be not a good thing, right? As we all know, all of us that have jobs, work is sometimes energizing. Sometimes work is totally draining. It can be both. But where the problem lies, and again, it's the same thing with training, the same thing with your occupation and career, is the more times, the more your work isn't rejuvenating and isn't fulfilling and is stress inducing, and you regret it or you resent it or it's no longer fun or you're not getting excited about it. that there's a sign, right? That you don't have enough of those rejuvenation days, enough of these fun days, things to look forward to with your work. These are gratifying. These are fulfilling. This is in every aspect of life, right? Being obsessed with the work, it gets you. It doesn't get you that far. It really doesn't. That's why, like, as much as I love my job, as much as I love to work, I'm always at my best coming out of a vacation. Period. I'm rejuvenized. I've kind of reset. I'm excited. I see things differently. I read things differently. My responses are different. My attitude is different. How I engage is different versus, going on, 2 camps where you're working on the weekends and you're back to work and you're going on 2 or 3 weeks of really like no time off and you got races every weekend and people need something. You got no break. That's not sustainable for anybody. That's why you have to take breaks to be great. You have to take breaks to be great. I was listening to a podcast, this is I think a year or two ago, and they were talking with a high-level sports scientist, and they asked, if you could go back and do anything, or no, if you could do more of one thing. We're talking about sports scientists here who coaches high-level endurance athletes. Always nose in the book, looking at data, looking at coaching, looking at numbers, looking at training sessions. And he said, if you give one piece of advice to up and coming coaches, what would it be? And he said, spend more time away from everything. Away from books, away from research papers, away from training, away from the data, away from the numbers, away from it all, away from the athletes. He says, because that is actually when you do your best work. Because everything that you have now becomes clear. Your last 2 to 3 weeks or 2 to 3 months of accumulating knowledge from athlete sessions or what you've read or what podcast you've listened to or what experiment you've done, all of that is still in you, but it cannot be created and molded into something productive until you have enough bandwidth and free space to think through it and then educate yourself on it and then apply it. And I thought that was fascinating just because it's so true, right? If you don't give yourself that break and that headspace, you're always thinking, you're always focusing, you're always in it, you're always in the chaos. And that is it, period. And I think that's, again, like something that athletes, it's mind and body, right? Your body needs those breaks too.
For sure, man. When you say stuff like that, it always brings me back to Shavasana in yoga. And the end of it, what we talk about is you do the yoga class, and then at the end, everybody lays down on their back and sort of just drifts and meditates and lets the work soak in. And invariably, like half the class will skip out, before Shavasana because they don't have time for it, and they got to get back to their chaos. And that every yoga teacher I've ever had said that's the most important part of the class, is letting it sink in. And like you're saying, take a break. And it's so interesting, this take a break concept. I remember, way back when we started working out together, you were starting to train me back from my first Ironman and the Moneghetti run. And I remember it said, 30 on, 30 off, 30 on, 30, whatever, the pyramid scale. And it would say, I think it said in there, easy on the off or walk. And I'd always look at walk and like, that's so ridiculous. Because my goal, like back then, was always to try and get as far as I could in the hour Moneghetti, and I had a competition with the guy. And I think that some of that is healthy sometimes, but it was always sort of like I'd be on and then my off would be sort of still on, it would just be keep cooking all the time and not let the work set in. And if I may talk a little bit about bike power, because like I said, I've been riding with it for a while, and I've just been kind of like I always do, is sort of figure out what's going on my own and things like that. One of the funniest things I've noticed is that, everybody talks about bike power and they always want to push more power. They want to be stronger and push more power. I think, like I've been watching, like in the tour, like you're saying, when people are sitting back in the Peloton, they're not throwing any power really. I mean, they're just taking a break, you know. You said take a break and let it soak in. And I think that that's important, right? Like one of my goals lately has been figuring out how to actually be more efficient and not throw as much power. And so, because my thought is like, you know, a lot of times I'll ride the same route, for example, and if I can get, I'm just really working on like how I think about my pedal stroke and being, you know, being most efficient with that and everything. And sometimes I'll just go out and really not look at things, just kind of gauge a little as I'm going. It's like, okay, that feels like whatever, 180. And I look over and be like, yeah, okay. So, but sometimes like, taking advantage, like being more efficient and effective, you know, like I won't look at my miles an hour, but at the end I will. I'll be like, damn, that was as fast as, you know, I threw out with, you know, 15 more watt average last time. So I'm really interested in this concept of being super efficient versus always just trying to hammer and push that power up and, you know, put it on Strava or something like that. You know, it's just an interesting concept to me. And I always think about training that way as like, how can I make this easier? You know, and you talked about me being like in the ballpark kind of thing. And that's where I'm at is like, all right, that was kind of a similar ride, but it was a lot less effort, you know? And it's not that I'm trying to go slower necessarily, but I'm just trying to be more efficient in everything. And I think that to me, that's like a massive concept in this sport is, you know, when it comes down to running too, for example, I'm always like, okay, just run in a way that's easy as possible. And whatever that means, you know, for your form and, you know, hopefully it's the right form and it feels easier, but maybe you're still going about as fast, you know, like those little things like that. And the reason I thought of that is because I will take breaks and, you know, it's sort of like push the edges and then take your break. You know, it's like, you know, you can take more than 2 seconds at the wall in a pool, you know, it's just like, it doesn't have to be about average pace, average speed, all that kind of stuff all the time to get better. And I think that those little things, you know, you talk about macro breaks in life, but these are micro breaks within workouts that I think are important too.
Well, I mean, it all goes again, like going back to the example I gave of like, you know, how you progress through a Monday through Wednesday, right? And sessions that are harder or easier, and how you can still end up at the same place on Wednesday, right? Should you so choose. It's the same way with you know, saying about walking or less rest, right? Is you can still always get to the same place, but what is the goal? Right? Understanding the goal is when you think about, so let's say I give you, 5 by 2 minutes at threshold running with 1 minute jog walk in between. Well, 80% of athletes are going to do the jog because they don't want to see their average pace drop.
Mm-hmm.
That's all they care about. Average pace, baby, average pace. But what usually happens, right, is that, and again, going back to the goal is to raise your threshold, right, in running. So by doing that, you want to have the fastest, best threshold number. So it usually looks something like this. Rep 1, 7-minute pace, slow jog. Rep 2, 7-minute pace, light jog. Rep 3, 7:07, 7:08. Rep 4, 7:13, 7:14. Rep 5, 7:40. Best gets burned, right? But they gotta have that pace. Or split 1, 6:35. Walk. Next split, 6:37. Walk. Next split, 6:37. Walk. Next split, 6:40. Walk. Next split, 6:43. Who got faster? The second person got faster because they were able to push their threshold higher and to be more consistent with it. And that intensity right there will be greater than the semi borderline threshold, kind of like more like tempo later on jog. So same thing with the pool. I just want to get it done. But what's the intention of the day? Is it Is it doing your form right and taking longer rests to make sure your arms are recovered to do it right the next time, and imprinting that muscle memory to have the best type of form, to hold it, to be repetitive with it so your body can learn it? Or is the point just get through it so you keep doing the same thing over and over and over and over and over again? I can't grab swimming. Just gonna do it right. I'm not being patient enough. Same thing if I want to do all-out sprints on 25 seconds, because a lot of times I get what I call equal rest. So let's say you do a 25 and it takes you 20 seconds. We take a whole 20 seconds rest. Coach, that's forever. I hate waiting that long. Okay, well then keep, not working on your VO2 max and swimming, not working on that high-end speed, and see what that gets you. Because you're well down to 10 seconds, and again, same thing's going to happen between the 5x2 minute jog instead of the 5x2 minute walk. You're gonna start to do, you start to go slower, where the goal is to be able to go faster. Same thing with cycling, right? And again, it's people are so concerned with, like if you're doing 10 by 1 minute hard anaerobic intervals, high intensity above VO2 max, and easy spinning. Well, most athletes I'll just say barely turn the legs over, because you want your heart rate to come down. But a lot of athletes, they just want to keep trucking. They don't want to see their average power come down. And I can't have that posted on Strava. I can't have people saying that. And then, you'll have them do they'll end up, they'll pedal harder more in zone 2. So they're high. Their 1 minute efforts on the 10s aren't nearly as high as they could be. So what happens is they go for Strava show, and their average power is 170 and their normalized power is 200. Yay. Or they could go all out, let it all hang out, bust like you're supposed to on all outs, and have an average power of 160 Strava Womp, but with a normalized power of 215. Guess who's better? The second one, because normalized power is a physiological response. But there's just things that athletes refuse to or won't, right? Or a lack of comprehending exactly what it's supposed to be in terms of progression, and understanding that there's a time and place for all things. And for most people, you could take a lot more time in resting and recovering. And if you want the hard sessions to be able to be hard and to feel really great, then you must rest, right? You must recover, and you must treat your body accordingly.
Well said.
That's all I got for today.
Is it?
Yeah. Unless you got something else, you got a little cherry on top you can treat us with.
No.
Save it. Save it for Thursday.
Let's save it for Thursday. Maybe we can talk a little more about swimming on Thursday.
Yeah. No reason to burn your biscuits today.
No.
Save them.
All right. Let's move on. I did interview Coach Chuck Knuth. We'll do him on Thursday too.
Yeah, I'll do a little swim action on Thursday, and we'll tack him on at the end.
Yeah, we'll tack him on the beginning too, and we can talk about his swimming prowess.
Just don't choose him as your coach if you like spoiler alerts. Spoiler alert, Chuck. This is new. Spoiler alert, Chuck. That's all we got today. We love you guys. We appreciate you. Go to the website, c26triathlon.com. It's our one-stop shop for all things coaching, camps, and community. If you need anything from Mike, he is available. Mike at c26triathlon.com. If you need anything from me, I'm available. Robbie at c26triathlon.com.
All right, buddy.
All right, dude. Talk to you later.
Recover. All right. See you.